of joy and years of pain, building up communities, claiming power and growing strong, care and courage face disease. Now today we offer thanks for the ones who struggled on, Stonewall's children, everyone, dead and living, here and gone. Lives of pride and lives of love, trans and lesbian, bi and gay, bringing blessings to the world, glad that we were born this way. All our days we offer thanks for the people we've become, Stonewall's gift to every age, making of this world our home.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Kathy Harrington. I use pronouns she, her. I'm interim minister of this congregation, just began in August, and happy to be here. I'm especially grateful this morning for our worship team, Bernice Lynch, Ruth Christie, Jason Smith, Jess Fox, Les Downs, and Sandra Goodson. It's a great team to be working with. I chose opening words this morning from Reverend J. Abernathy. We affirm that love is our greatest purpose. Accepting one another is our truest form of faithful living. The search for truth is our constant star. We pledge our hearts, minds, and hands to challenge injustice with courage, to find hope in times of fear, and to live out our Unitarian Universalist values every day as a beloved community. Thus, we do covenant with each other and with all that is sacred in life. Our chalice lighting this morning is by Douglas John Traversa. In a world filled with darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason. In a world filled with the darkness of despair, may we share the light of hope. In a world filled with the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. And now it's time for our wisdom story. Ruth Christie has a story for us to share.
My name is Ruth Christie, and I'm a member of our congregation's You Are You committee. I like the acronym better than the full name. The full name is Universal Rainbow Unity, but I think it was chosen to say You Are You. And the book I'm going to read today, our wisdom story, is It Feels Good to Be Yourself, a book about gender identity, written by Teresa Thorne and illustrated by Noah Grigney. And the named person in the book is Ruthie. This is Ruthie. She's a transgender girl. That means when she was born, everyone thought she was a boy until she grew a little older, old enough to tell everyone that she's actually a girl. Girl is Ruthie's gender identity. This is Ruthie's brother, Javier. Javier is a cisgender boy. That means when Javier was born, everyone thought he was a boy, and as he grew older, it turned out Everyone was right. He is a boy. Boy is Javier's gender identity. There are so many different ways to be a boy or a girl, too many to fit in a book. But not everyone feels like either a boy or a girl. Non-binary is a helpful word that can describe a kid who doesn't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. This is Ruthie's friend Alex. Alex is both a boy and a girl. When Alex was born, everyone thought Alex was a girl, but Alex is both boy and girl. This is Alex's gender identity. This is Alex's friend JJ. JJ is neither a boy nor a girl. Ever since JJ was very little, they never felt exactly like a boy or a girl. They just felt like themselves. This is JJ's gender identity. Alex and JJ are both non-binary. Just like there are many different ways to be a boy or a girl, there are many different ways to be non-binary. Too many to fit in a book. Some kids feel like girls, some kids feel like boys, some kids feel like a little bit of both, part boy, part girl. Some kids don't feel exactly like a boy or a girl. They feel like neither. Some kids feel that their gender identity isn't always the same. It's often changing. And even with all these possible ways to be, some kids don't feel any of the words they know fit them exactly. There are a never-ending number of ways to be yourself in the world. Whether you feel like a boy, a girl, both, or neither, if you describe yourself another way, that is your gender identity. Your gender identity might match what people thought you were when you were born, or it might not. See, when you were born, you couldn't tell people who you were or how you felt. They looked at you and made a guess. Maybe they got it right, maybe they got it wrong. What a baby's body looks like when they're born can be a clue to what the baby's gender will be, but not always. When people guess wrong, it's okay to let them know. Ruthie was 5 when she told her parents, "I know you think I'm a boy, but really I feel like a girl." Whoops, Ruthie was a girl all along. They just didn't know it at first. When people guess right, it's okay to let them know. Javier was 3.5 when he told his family, "I'm a boy. I like being a boy." You might feel like a boy. You might feel like a girl. You might feel like both, boy and girl, or like neither. You might feel like your gender changes from day to day or from year to year. You might feel like none of these words describe you perfectly. You might not be sure yet. Maybe you're still figuring it out. Your feelings about your gender are real. Listen to your heart. No matter what your gender identity is, you are okay exactly the way you are, and you are loved. It feels good to be yourself, doesn't it?
Our opening hymn is number 1012, When I Am Frightened. Sandra Goodson will sing it for us. If you're viewing at home, please feel free to sing along. If you're here in the sanctuary, you may hum if you wish.
Wow, thank you, Sandra. That was beautiful. Now it's time for the work of the congregation. We are partnering with Beloved to install their 14th pantry, which will be located on Charlotte Street, across from City Bakery. There are many ways for you to get involved. We especially need adopters to fill the pantry one day a month or more. For more information and how to sign up, check the e-news or our Facebook pages. Join us for the pantry installation celebration after the service and Christmas caroling on December 5th. As you see, our announcements now are running as slides at the beginning of the service. So if you missed them, you can check them out in the e-news, in the weekly e-news. Everything is there as well. And I will remind you that our community plate recipient this month is Bountiful Cities, a Nashville-based organization dedicated to teaching sustainable agriculture skills and resources in urban environments to promote social justice and economic viability. They envision abundance and food sovereign communities, working primarily in Asheville and Buncombe County since 2000. Bountiful Cities has promoted social justice and food sovereignty through hands-on educational programming, policy work, coalition building, urban agriculture installation, and community gardens. For our offering, for your gifts of time, talent, presence, and financial support, we are very grateful. Thank you so much. For those of you in the sanctuary, there is a donation plate at the door as you go out. Thank you. Last night, we held a Transgender Day of Remembrance service here in the sanctuary, and we live streamed it. 46 people died this year in the United States from violence. So in our centering this morning, I want to light a candle for them and to read a blessing. But for right now, let us just pause to honor the silences of the world, to open our hearts for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. Let us share. I want to read you this blessing, and then we'll do a silence. This is a blessing by Reverend Teresa Inez Soto. Dear trans, non-binary, genderqueer, and gender-expansive friends and kin, and those of us whose gender is survival, let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. You are not hard to love and respect. Your existence is a blessing. Your pronouns are not a burden or a trial. They are part of your name, just shorter. Someone getting them wrong is not a poor reflection on you. It is not your fault. Your body really and truly belongs to you, no one else. The stories of your body, the names of your body parts, and your body's privacy are the sum of your body's glory. It's not okay for anyone to press their story on you. Back to the beginning of your liberation, we will find people ready to be on the way to freedom, and we will go on. No one can rename you. Others, if it won't stick, as you offer the gift of being and saying who you are. Mostly through your stories, they belong to you. Your joy and complexity is beautiful. However, you may choose to tell it or not tell it. Some folks, cis, may take the liberty or for an unholy license. You are beloved. Please keep to the shared tasks of healing and getting free. May it be so. And now let us share a moment of silence together. And now it's time for joys and sorrows. You're invited at this time to type into the chat a joy or sorrow that you would like to share with the congregation. And for those of you in the sanctuary, you are also invited to light a candle of memory or hope. If you have shared a joy, know that this community rejoices with you. And if you have shared a sorrow, know that you are held in love and care by this community.
I want to share with you a poem by Leslie Takahashi. It's called Marginal Wisdom. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues, but we are taught to think in either or. To believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha. To believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, queer versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center.
The light comes as a rainbow, infusing us with colors, assuring us a welcome, a covenant of care. The rainbow fills horizons, surrounding us with beauty, reminding us to honor the love that's always there. The light lives in our bodies, inspiring us to wonder, inviting us to passion, a covenant of joy. The rainbow is a present, a gift to all creation, a promise from the holy to bless and not destroy. The light grows in our healing, it draws us to each other, it helps us to imagine a covenant of peace. The rainbow is a model of difference in relation, apart and yet together, the colors never cease.
Trans people are all around us. They are our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our lawyers, our bankers, journalists, artists, neighbors, friends, and loved ones. President Joe Biden marked the Transgender Day of Remembrance yesterday, paying tribute to those that we lost in the deadliest year on record for transgender Americans. In a statement shared with CNN, Biden remembers the countless other transgender people, disproportionately Black and brown transgender women and girls who face brutal violence, discrimination, and harassment. On Friday, the White House marked the day with a vigil. Biden reported that he spoke about the Human Rights Campaign, where it talked about this being the deadliest year with 46 transgender or gender non-conforming people killed. And in the report, the Human Rights Campaign said that nationwide in 2021, anti-LGBTQ plus bills have been enacted, including 13 anti-transgender laws across 8 states. Overall, more than 130 anti-transgender bills were introduced across 33 states. This is unacceptable, Karen Jean-Marie tweeted, the White House Deputy Secretary. Our hearts are with all those who loved and knew the transgender people, the 46 who were killed. And the march to end this epidemic of violence continues. President Biden, as you may remember, some of you may know, appointed Dr. Rachel Levine as an Assistant Health Secretary this year, a transgender woman. He called on the Senate to pass the Equality Act, which amends the 1964 Civil Rights Act to protect people from being discriminated against based on sexual orientation and gender identity, so that all people will be able to live free from discrimination and fear. That bill has passed the House in March, but has stalled in the Senate. We need to raise our voices, people, and get the Senate busy on passing this law. But what can we do? How can we help? I think we can begin to learn how to practice radical hospitality. Hospitality, by definition, is kindness, friendliness, and generosity offered to strangers and visitors. Radical hospitality is a term often used in Unitarian Universalist communities and other religious communities. It's about going above and beyond in welcoming people. Radical means drastically different from the ordinary. In his essay on radical hospitality as spiritual practice, David Reinex ends by reminding us that we may have little control over conflicts in other parts of the world, but we can practice truly honoring the preciousness of human life, all human life, by how we enter into relationship with one another. If we are serious about creating a more just, equitable, and compassionate world, we have to start with the room we are in. In his book, The Dignity of Difference, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs made a plea for tolerance in the age of extremism. In our interconnected world, we must learn to feel enlarged, not threatened by difference. We are enlarged. I think that's what this service is about. We are, and our capacity to love is increased by our transgender siblings and LGBTQ plus people in the world. The rainbow is beautiful. I have a transgender grandchild named Alexi. Alexi was known to me as Abby for 20 years, but now Alexi prefers the pronouns he, him. I confess that as a family, some of us are still adjusting to Alexi's liberation, but my heart is rejoicing. I can see how happy he is now. My son, Andy, who's Alexi's father, has been Alexi's greatest ally. I'm really moved that my son could be so expansive, accepting, and supportive in spite of the difficult years of discernment. And I give credit to our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition that has informed us for most of Andy's adult life and all of Alexi's life. We are imperfect and not without mistakes and misunderstandings, but we're always grounded in the commitment to love and justice. Unlike too many transgender young people, Alexi never feared or doubted that his family would reject him or abandon him. And I know for a fact that Unitarian Universalism is both life-saving and life-giving, but I also know the challenges aren't over. In 2021, it marked the 33rd anniversary of the release of the Welcoming Congregation program. For over 30 years, Unitarian Universalist congregations have taken concrete actions to be more intentionally welcoming for people of all sexual orientations and gender identities. Unitarian Universalists have been a force for justice for LGBTQ plus people in our larger communities, and 75% of our Unitarian Universalist congregations have gone through the Welcoming Congregation program. But unfortunately, this commitment in our history has not translated into fully welcoming and inclusive experience for all LGBTQ plus people in UU congregations. In the spring of 2018, a survey of trans Unitarian Universalists was conducted as a joint effort between TRUST, Trans Religious Professional UUs Together, and the Unitarian Universalist Association, the Multicultural Ministries Office. And the result shows that only 28% of trans UUs feel as though their current or most recent Unitarian Universalist congregation is completely inclusive of them. Only 15% of trans UUs feel strongly spiritually connected and nourished in their congregations. 42% of trans people experience regular trans-related marginalization in UU spaces. So in a faith that professes to be welcoming, these numbers are shocking. And to make matters worse, in today's political climate, trans people need affirming spiritual spaces more than ever, and they are being shut down. The Trump administration unleashed an assault on trans people and emboldened widespread prejudice and violence, as evidenced by the wave of anti-trans legislation that's sweeping our country. Now is the time. Now is the time for Unitarian Universalists everywhere to boldly celebrate gender diversity and honor the spiritual gifts of trans leaders. We are called to fight for justice and liberation for trans people and welcome people of all or no genders as full participants in our communities. So we often confuse gender identity with sexual orientation. That is, who a person is sexually attracted to or affectional orientation describes to whom we are romantically attracted. It's important to remember that our gender identity only refers to ourself, not to whom we are attracted to. The lumping of these together comes about because of societal assumptions about sex, gender, and gender expression. Speaking of transgender individuals, they can have any of various sexual orientations. A transgender person can be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or straight. Each of us has a sexual orientation as well as a gender identity, and we will make mistakes. A couple of years ago, a UU World article caused great harm to our transgender community, but responses by our trans religious leaders, TRUST, they elicited an apology and set in motion an awareness that we still had a lot to learn. The UU World responded to the article by apologizing and the editor making a commitment to listening and learning from transgender and non-binary leaders in the Unitarian Universalist movement. Valuing the inherent worth and dignity of every person means listening. When people on the margins take the time and the energy to tell you what it is that they need, we listen and we follow through as directed. This is a responsible search for truth and meaning, has to be also responsive. In a sermon by Cian Wiltshire, she shares the story of a transgender woman, Rita Hester, who was murdered in 1998. The press and the police referred to Rita by her birth name and used male pronouns. This was painfully perceived as an erasure of Rita by her friends and loved ones. Rita deserved to be treated with dignity and respect in both her life and in her death. So it's critical that we, while we're learning to be radically hospitable, learn new vocabulary. Which pronoun do we use? Well, we ask. He, she, they, them, zay, zim, zir, genderqueer. We can practice using gender-neutral words such as spouse instead of husband or wife, siblings instead of brother or sister, parent instead of mother or father, and child instead of son or daughter. It can feel overwhelming. We have a lot to learn. And how do we police all of our words? Because we will make mistakes. So we need to live into our values. Our first principle will take effort. After all, we are guided to build up other people's identities. We don't tear them down. Harrowing statistics from a study published by American Academy of Pediatrics revealed alarming levels of attempted suicide amongst transgender youth, with the highest rates among transgender boys and non-binary youth. The findings emphasize the urgency of building welcoming and safe communities for LGBTQ+ young people, and particularly transgender youth. More than half of the transgender male teens who participated in the survey reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, while 29.9% of transgender females said they attempted suicide. Bryn Tannehill writes, "It isn't being transgender that's killing us, though. It's the culture we live in, discriminating against us and instilling in us a deeply rooted self-hatred. How can we value our own lives when we are constantly bombarded with messages that we have zero worth as a person because we are transgender?" We learn that love isn't unconditional, that in fact, we cannot be loved by the people who mean the most to us. Life holds a promise of loneliness and abandonment. We are told that we are wrong. I know this is a lot of dire information, but we have to pay attention, folks. This is a matter of life and death. Our trans siblings need us. 80% of transgender children face harassment, depression, and bullying as an everyday reality. Religion and society tell them there is something wrong with them. Bans on bathrooms, as here in North Carolina, a military ban put into effect by the Trump administration, canceling out Obama's radically hospitable welcome. Unfortunately, Biden removed the ban immediately. So now I want to just give you a few tips on how to be an ally. This comes from the website GLAD, GLADD.org. The site has a lot of helpful resources if you want to go deeper and learn more about how you can be an ally to our trans siblings. They say there's no way to be the perfect ally, and you don't have to understand somebody's identity to respect it. Use the language a transgender person uses for themselves, and no two transgender people are exactly the same and may use different words to describe themselves. Just follow their lead. As I said earlier, listen. Listen, they know what is best for them. If you don't know what pronouns, it's okay to ask. A simple way to see what pronoun someone uses, he, she, they, or something else, is to wait and see if it comes up in a natural conversation. But if you're still unsure, you can politely and respectfully, without making a big deal about it. Sharing your own pronouns is also a good way. Hi, I'm Kathy. I use she, her, hers pronouns. How about you? And if you accidentally use the wrong pronouns, which I confess I do all the time, and I apologize immediately. Apologize and move on. Making a big deal out of it just makes it awkward and draws unwanted attention to the transgender person. Be careful and considerate about the questions that you ask. Like, many topics are kind of off limits: medical transition, life pre-transition, sexual activity that you might be curious about, but it's not appropriate. So there are two questions to ask yourself that may help before you determine if you want to bring up a topic. Do I need to know this information to treat them respectfully? Asking someone's pronoun and name is appropriate. Beyond that, though, you may be curious about questions that are things that you do not need to know. For example, a transgender coworker's surgical history is rarely information you need to know. And then ask yourself, would I be comfortable if this question was turned around and asked of me? Another good way to determine if a question is appropriate is to think about how it would feel if someone asked you something similar. It's not appropriate to ask questions about a transgender's coworker's body. So specific topics that transgender people are uncomfortable discussing with anyone but those who are closest to them. Their birth name. Never call it their real name. Or photographs from before they transitioned. What hormones they are or are not taking. What surgeries they've had or had not. Questions related to their sexual relationships. And as the book that Ruth shared, explaining non-binary, I don't think I need to go into that, but people whose gender is not male or female use many different terms to describe themselves. Non-binary being one. Other terms include genderqueer, agender, bigender, and more. And none of these terms may mean exactly the same thing. Non-binary people are nothing new. They're not confused about their gender identity or following a new fad. Non-binary identities have been recognized for millennia by cultures and societies all over the world. Some, but not all, non-binary people undergo medical procedures to make their bodies more congruent with their gender identity. While not all non-binary people need medical care to live a fulfilling life, it's critical and life-saving for many. Most transgender people are not non-binary. While some transgender people are non-binary, most transgender people have chosen a gender identity that is either male or female and should be treated like any other man or woman. Being non-binary is not the same thing as being intersex. Intersex people have an anatomy or genes that don't fit the definition of male and female. Non-binary people are usually not intersex. They are usually born with bodies that may fit typical definitions of male and female, but their innate gender identity is something other. The Reverend Marilyn Sewell, who was the minister of our congregation in Portland, Oregon, wrote a sermon about radical hospitality. She gives sort of questions about what it's like to be welcoming. She writes, "Let's talk about some people who might actually visit our church and imagine to what extent they might be welcome. A young woman with an infant in her arms, and the baby starts to cry and whimper, and then she begins breastfeeding. A Native American with long dark hair comes in. A man from a Pentecostal background waves his hands in the air as he's singing Spirit of Life. A beautifully bedecked woman in a flowered print dress with matching high heels and a purse. She is 6 feet 4 inches tall and clearly transgender. Another is a person who speaks out of turn and can't follow the hymns and maybe appears to be mentally ill. And a well-dressed couple. The man has an American flag in the lapel of his suit, and they have Bibles with them. A homeless man who hasn't bathed in a week. A woman with a guide dog, a serviceman back from Iraq in uniform visiting his aunt and uncle. Marilyn says these people that I've described are not unlike people who have come into our sanctuary. The values of Unitarian Universalism are clear and compelling. Reverend Michael Crumpler writes, one of the most radical assertions of Unitarian Universalism is that every single human is endowed with inherent worth and dignity. We are all born from an unimaginable, unshakable love that brought us into being and from which we can never be separated. Our faith insists that any system that works to erode our full humanity is unjust and harmful and must be dismantled. Unitarian Universalism urges us to dedicate our hearts and our lives and our life forces towards dismantling white supremacy and creating a world in which every single person has the ability to live free and to thrive. I want you to know that there are transgender people all around us. They are our doctors, our nurses, our teachers, our lawyers, our neighbors, our loved ones, our friends. They are our living, happy, full, meaningful lives. It's not all ain't it awful, but it is our job to make sure that all transgender siblings will be treated with respect. We are grateful to all who carry the flame and the call of our faith and are emboldened to fight for trans liberation. May we also feel that call and recognize the urgency. The time is now for Unitarian Universalists to fight for trans liberation. May it be so. Now, let us lift our voices. If you're at home, and sing along, and if you're in the sanctuary, hum along. Following the postlude, you're invited to change over to the Zoom link for those of you who are watching online. It was in the email that you received this morning. Please stay for a time of fellowship and conversation. Jane Malden's words for our closing today. May the love of truth guide you, and the warmth of love hold you, and the spirit of peace bless you this day and for all the days to come. Go in peace, and blessed be.
Like a lemon drops high above the chimney top, that's where